So all too often, the numeric columns we are given as part of whatever data generation process is kicking off our data sheets are not exactly the columns that we want. So this can be small things like they're measured in the wrong units, like we have a column of revenues in dollars versus euros, or it can be things much more complicated, like I need to take a ratio of two fields, which still isn't that complicated, or combine a bunch of fields in fairly complicated ways. The good news is there are lots of functionalities to deal with this, and the most common one is calculated fields. So let's get started with this, and again in our bookshop data set. I want to point out that like when we make calculated fields, and we've done this a bunch already. I mean, I'm sure you've done this a bunch already. Most of these are not that bad. You know, it's like, yeah, add these two fields together, divide by this field. Like I know you know how to do that. So let's do something a little bit more complicated, one that requires level of detail expressions and some more kind of non-standard treatment, because that's really where the difficulties lie, is like getting this thing right, especially when you have some like hiccups is actually kind of tough sometimes. So let's give this a shot. So when I was looking through this data set the first time, one thing that really caught my eye was this discount field here. And this is really interesting, I think, from a business perspective, because you might ask yourself questions like, so are some authors being discounted more or less than others? Are some genres, are some price points? Like what is my discounting strategy? How's that playing out for me? And to do that, we really need to get an idea of how much the discount is actually mattering in various places. So let's take a look at the data set itself. So if we go over to sales, we'll see that one of the peculiarities of discount as a field is that when there is a discount, it's listed as a decimal. So this is like 15%. But then when there is no discount, it's listed as null. So this is not a 0% discount. This null is like formally missing. And we're going to see that this type of coding, which oftentimes we don't have a choice about, can cause serious problems when we're actually making our calculations. So let's start by doing one. Let's make a calculation. And so we have something to compare against. Let's do revenue without discount. So this is just normal revenue, discount not applied. So remember that the revenue is happening at the item level here, and so rather than rely on whatever level of detail is happening in the view, we really do need to drill down here to both the order ID level and the item ID level. And here we just want to sum the price. And let me just be a little bit more clear about this. Price lives in the addition data sheet, and because of that, if we were to just sum the price, the level of detail would never get past that addition unless we forced it to. In many visualizations, we wouldn't force it to, and so we would get strange answers. Remember, the level of the detail of the visualization is determining what level each one of these aggregation functions is being computed at. Here, we're forcing it to go all the way down to the item level before it starts summing the price. This is kind of a cop-out because at the item level, there's just one price. So if you're saying, why would you do that? You're totally right. It's just that every level of detail function, a level of detail expression has to return an aggregate. If that was completely Greek to you and it's not making any sense, please pause this, go back and look at the level of detail videos where we talk about this in a lot more detail, and hopefully it'll make more sense. So that's our revenue without discounts. Let's do our revenue with discount. Let's make a new calculated field, revenue with discount this time around. And we'll do, again, a level of detail expression fixing the order ID and the item ID. And here we're going to sum, but what are we going to sum? We're going to sum price times, and let's try 1 minus discount, huh? Seems like a reasonable place to start. So if the discount is 0.15, that means there's a 15% discount, which means we get 85% of the revenue, 1 minus the discount times the price. That looks all good. So let's do this. And then just to make sure that we're doing well here, let's just make a little table. You know, maybe you're getting the impression by now that this is kind of the way I spot check things. And hopefully that's helpful to you too. So let's do without discount first. Without discount, and we'll make this into a discrete value, and then with discount, and we'll make this a discrete value. So I have like serious alarm bells going off in my head when I look at this, because look at the revenue without the discount. Okay, $1,700, no revenue. $6,700, $60. $18,000, $200. So what is going on here? There is a major problem. There's a major problem. This does not seem, it seems like this revenue with discount is just completely nonsensical, and it is. And the reason for that is because of these nulls. So every time Tableau sees a null, it just ignores everything about that. So if we're doing price times 1 minus discount and discount is a null, then 1 minus discount is a null and price times discount is a null, and we don't get anything out of that transaction at all. So what we need here is a methodology to give us a 0, for instance, if there is a null, and there's actually a function exactly for that. So hopefully that made sense. Every time we see a null, all the arithmetic associated with that gets canceled out. So if we have discount equals null, then 1 minus discount is null, and then 1 minus discount times price is null. And so we don't get any revenue from that transaction at all. So to fix this, we actually need to go to revenue with discount and edit. And then there's actually a function that's zn, and the zn function basically says, give me the value back if there is a value there, and if not, give me a 0 back. And what we're going to see, hopefully, is that these values disappear, and in fact, each one of these values, for the revenue with discount broken down by author, can at most be the same, and that's what we're seeing here, but is likely a little bit low. So let's do a little bit more, because we can actually go farther than this. So let's say make another calculated field, and we'll call this discount and measured in dollars. And this is just going to be the revenue with discount. Let's do actually revenue without discount minus revenue with discount. So this is really how much we knocked off the price, but not in terms of percent now. It's actually in terms of dollars. So we can see, like, actually, are we giving a lot of dollars? Like, are we foregoing a lot of revenue with this discount? Are we foregoing a little revenue with this discount? Because not all 10% discounts are made equally, right? It could be 10% of a $100 book or 10% of a $10 book. And those are very different from a cash flow basis. So let's run this thing again, and now drag it up once more, make it discrete, and we can see, so notice right now it's aggregated by the sum, but this might not make sense in this case. Well, it could, right? Like you could say, like McCrum, for instance, like we're giving away a lot of money on McCrum, but that could be because McCrum is selling a lot of books. It's not necessarily that, like, on a per book basis we're discounting McCrum's works highly. It could just be that McCrum is selling us a ton of books. So maybe let's change the level of measure to, the aggregation to average. And for instance, we see McCrum is still quite high. So we're giving away on average about $1 per transaction involving McCrum. And the only one I see that's bigger is like Stackhouse, is about $1.50 per transaction discounted, and Littman, which is about $1.25 per transaction discounted. So obviously this is the kind of a gateway to a big exploration. You could ask yourself, are we discounting books in certain genres more highly than others? Are we discounting some individual books more highly than others? Paperbacks versus hardcovers? Are we offering different discounts at different times of years? But the entire point is that it's actually kind of difficult to get to the point where you can answer that question, both because these calculations often involve level of detail expressions, which are complicated in and of their own right, but then there can also be peculiarities related to missing values, for instance, that force us to really think carefully and always check your work to the extent that it's possible to make sure that the data we're getting are accurate and reasonable before we dive into all those explorations. They can lead us down the wrong track.